Thanks for joining me again. Sealed for Good. This week we're talking about pedestal pavers and the impact they can have on waterproofing. We are seeing pedestal paving and decking systems being used more and more frequently. Many of our designer friends are using them commonly. I was on a recent trip to Europe last year and I have to say it was probably the hot piece of design for external flooring. So pay attention to this one because there might be some good things coming out of it. I'm sure you can use for your applications and your building designs. As I mentioned, we're seeing more and more architects specifying pedestal pavers on the flooring of decks and podiums now as an alternative to the traditional tiled flooring. So what is a pedestal paving system? Well, as you'll see now, you can see that it's a substructure system where you can have an external raised flooring application. So often used with tiles or particularly external pavers that are elevated or sitting on a foot pedestal that can be adjusted to get the heights right as an alternative to using a screed. Timber decking is also, we see timber decking as an alternative for this with pedestals, and it creates a raised floor for things like green roofs, which we've mentioned previously, balconies and terraces. Great concept, very popular, have a lot of advantages, and these are the reasons why more and more people are using them in their designs. Firstly, ecologically. Everything's recyclable. And that's where designers really like a pedestal paving system, other than the advantages of it being a logical way of applying product and less maintenance. From the pedestals to the actual flooring, at the end of the life of the building, things can be removed without being wasted. They can be used again. So there's nothing like screeds and concrete mortars, tile adhesives, residues, etc. They're going to go into landfill and waste. Basically, those pedestals can be removed. The feet can be removed and a different design could be used if needed. You could even go back to a traditional form of flooring if you wanted to. But that is one of the big reasons that it is being used, is the ecological piece because of the recyclable focus from it. There's also better thermal insulation with pedestal paving systems. So that void between the paving and the membrane on the floor, it allows a constant air circulation. So that helps with the life of the top of the waterproofing surface as well, because you've always got a drying and a wetting effect that happens. You improve the heat insulation into the building, and you protect the surface from UV degradation. That is the big one. So membrane systems that are used there are not under the stress of being exposed to UV light. There's a big push on this, and I'm going to talk about this point to our tiling friends, the simplified and speedy installation. There's no adhesive fixing for the pedestals of the flooring. They might be spot fixed, but normally they are loose laid, positioned in place for the pedestals. The floor finishing can be installed much faster than the conventional adhesive system, and in different weather conditions as well. Climatic conditions don't hold up the application. So compared to a mechanical fixed flooring system, it is far quicker. My advice to tilers out there that are watching, don't think this is a trade that is going to take work away from you. Add it to your armour, even though I know none of the schools where they're training tilers are showing this piece. It needs to be incorporated into the future trade for tilers, because I believe it still is a floor finish. More often than not, they are tiled applications. The skills you've got with tile fixing, don't say it's either I tile fix it or bugger off and use a pedestal paver. Offer both so you don't lose out work, because I can tell you these are not going backwards. The design of this is just going to be more disruptive for floor finishes outside, so don't neglect that piece. Height adjustment and slope adjustment, this is the big one. You are capable of accommodating heights without making radical changes to the floor. Now, many of you know that sometimes you get on site and the floor doesn't allow you to reach the falls that you require, or you could be restricted from some design piece or the way just there's been, you found the substrate. Instead of having to do corrective slope design or devices, you've actually got these pedestal feet that can be adjusted quite easily. You can make them trip hazard free or level, but you've got the gap between them to still allow water to drain through, and so they are much more flexible in their design for you to enable that floor finish that you want. Substrate inspection, repairs and hiding services. This is a huge plus. If you've ever got the suspicion of a leak or damage, now the ability to remove a paver and actually see the membrane system and fix it is far quicker than removing tiles that are fixed where you've got the other damage that happens to the membrane surface. Real important on that one. quite critical actually. So remember that, because that is a big plus and a feature. You are able to hide things like certain cables or hosing if need be, and we're seeing more of these designs happening externally, which is a huge advantage because it's between the floor and the tile, but it's concealed so you don't see it. And it does allow for that quick inspection. You know, a lot of the times if you've got a drain underneath there, you can actually see if it's been blocked. You can clean them more frequently. It's just a much more pleasant and logical floor finish in many ways than what traditional tile or fixed systems are. Now, I'm not saying that this is a preference for me over tile finishes, but these are the benefits. And those commercial buildings, particularly where people have been involved in maintenance and repairs, this is the big feature of why pedestal pavers are being used, because you don't have things like grouts or silicons and caulking compounds that mould, discolour, etc. They can be overcome through the pedestal piece. So it's a system that is becoming more and more frequent, and that is one of the reasons why, because of the logical piece of how it can be inspected and repaired when needed. So water drainage and damp issues, this is the big reason as well why pedestal pavers are being used. The small gap between that flooring, those tiles or the flooring finish, allows water to pass through, allowing rapid drainage, and so that's far quicker than having that water just sitting on that floor surface. So it is, even if you've got a finished membrane surface on roof areas or podiums, you've always got to rely on the falls only, and there can be slip factors there. Pedestal pavers with those gaps between each tile or paver allows the water to drain through far quicker. So that's one big reason for it as well. It avoids the issue with movement from the substrate structure affecting the floor finish. As many of you know, if you've got an exposed membrane finish or you've got ceramic tile finishes and you've got bad substrate movement, sometimes you get on site and the roof is buggered from day one, you are relying on anti-fracture or slip resistant systems to avoid the floor finish from having cracks or grout coming out, etc. Cracked tiles, this avoids that. The substrate movement basically is independent. We still recommend using a system like our GC2, which has got anti-fracture systems, because it is a heavy load of water sitting on the membrane now. However, the floor finish is now totally independent from the substrate, and that's a big plus. The impact for waterproofing. Falls required in the substrate, really important. That needs to happen prior to the membrane going down, or a waterproof screw is going to be applied over the waterproofing, but I prefer in these applications that is all taken care of first. The membrane system is down. It allows the membrane to be finished quite easily and repaired easily if needed. And the beauty of this is that if you have got additional build-ups with the membrane, it's not like an exposed membrane finish. So if there's a couple, let's call it a few high build areas or little untidy lines, it's going to be concealed by the paving finish, but as long as it's functional, and you can get your flood tests on it very quickly. Pedestal pavers will be laid directly over to that membrane system, so it's still important to have a robust abrasive resistant membrane finish. Our GC2 with one of our finishes like our LS roof coat, or we put either one of our cementitious systems on top, will handle both the pedestal feet sitting on it and any water just ponding over it while it drains away. So one of the systems that you need to ensure that you've got waterproofing that can handle that environment, a real big one. Impact resistant for things like the loadings of pedestals. Sometimes acoustic rubbers, core flute, other little resting pads are used under the pedestal feet, really important. Termination points of the membrane, all the turn-ups of vertical walls, etc. need to be seamless, need to be ensure that they are fixed to the point where if you've got water flooding, because you're now going to have a return at the wall floor junction, and you won't see that, it's going to be under the line of the floor finish, that can handle those conditions, because now it's not visible. So important to pay attention to those details, whether it's a return of a sheet membrane system up, or a bit more attention to detail either with a fillet system that you used within the membrane system itself. In summary, like I started with, pedestal pavers are becoming more and more popular. It is a thing, as I say always, it's part of the whole building envelope. We need to get this right in terms of the waterproofing piece, who's laying the pedestals down, and also the functional way that the surface is being used. This is not always a substrate that has to have a concrete slab. It might be a structural sheet flooring system that we can see that can handle this. But like I said, guys, I'm seeing this trend globally now with external floor finishes. It's going to be a bigger and bigger piece of Australian architecture and design in our buildings for external floors. Get onto it, let's do it right. Looking forward to photos of pedestal paving waterproofing. If you've got them, throw them our way. I'll see you next time.